Welcome back to the Unlimited Mindset Radio, where we talk about leadership, business entrepreneurship, personal growth, mental health, and everything in between, what my guests are truly passionate about and what I think will bring a positive impact in this world and around us. We go live with solo episodes and fireside chats. And today I'm bringing you a very special guest. It's a guest who's not only an executive coach helping individuals position themselves to better for success. She has also delivered numerous LinkedIn courses. She's done TEDx talks at Google, and she's just launched or released her most recent book called The New Rules of Influence. I'm introducing Lida Citroën. Lida and I had a really interesting conversation about influence and how to actually claim that you are a person of influence. Of those many notes I have, I just want to highlight a few of what really stood out for me, and you can dive into the conversation and drop your comment below what your key takeaways are. But for me, here's what Lida said. Lida said that, let's just get here, all my notes now. Lida said, influence does not start from the ranks, which means that you don't have to be a C-suite, you don't have to be a CEO to have influence. Claim your influence, show up, and create your personal brand because you know. Found that really interesting because authority does not equal influence. And we talked about the mandate, right? The mandate does not equal that people follow you. And this may resonate with you. I help a lot of women in C-suite, and we talk a lot about how to claim your mandate, how not to play small, how to be in room with big and difficult personalities. And what Lida said, I've really used it in my coaching just to remind my amazing clients. And I want to remind you that you can't be of influence without you having a C-suite title or without being a CEO. Remember that. And what Lida said here also was just be real. Lida talks about realness, authentic, being present, and serve. Just serve. Be so attached to the process. It was in an incredible conversation. And Lida says here also, it's really about being real. It's terrifying. And you've probably been there, right? It's so terrifying just to be you, just be real. Because in corporate, we're not us. We wear a lot of masks. But I know from experience and observation that when you allow yourself just to be you, everything changes. Though it does require courage. Courage to do it with fear. Courage is not to do it without fear. So just be curious. So I think with this, and this is the last question, with this question, I send you off to the conversation. Can I have executive presence if I don't have a title? And I think you already got the answer, but go and explore that question yourself and let me know your key takeaways. I'd love to hear how you can apply what Lida and I talked about in your own life and how that will help you take your career and your life to the next level. So with this, enjoy the conversation. Hey, Lydia, welcome to the Unlimited Mindset Radio.
Thank you. I am so excited to have this conversation with you.
I am so excited that you are here. And I just want to share with the listeners the reason I have needed, it was a need, I needed to talk to you, Lida, is that you've written a book that really got me to pause in my tracks. The New Rules of Influence. So we're talking about that, but I'm so excited. I'm so beyond grateful that you're taking the time to talk to me and join this chat.
Thank you.
And where are you dialing in from today?
I am calling in from the snowy area of Denver, Colorado in the United States, where we got about 20 inches of snow last week in about 24 hours.
Ooh, in Denmark, we haven't even got snow yet. So
Really? Wow.
that's the side.
Okay.
So,
It's coming.
so Lida, I'm always curious about my guest background and what got you to being like in the niche that you're creating, and you're still expanding about personal influence and without titles, right? And now your new book, The New Rules of Influence. Tell me about your backstory.
So I did what a lot of people do, right? And especially a lot of women. I graduated school. I took my first job. I was good at it. I got promoted. I had a better job. Then I got recruited to a different job. And I did that within the corporate world for about 20 years. And I wasn't unhappy. I was doing what I thought success looked like, right? I made money. I got promoted. I hit my goals. But I look back and I realize I wasn't fulfilled. I wasn't happy on the inside. I was happy on the things that I had been told were important. And in 2008, at least in the US, our economy fell apart. And everyone I knew was losing their homes, losing their jobs. I got laid off from a job. And it was in that moment that I thought, maybe there's something different. What I had done for those 20 years in the corporate world is help companies and products position themselves. So I was branding, business development, marketing, public relations. But in 2008, when I was going through this, what do I want to be when I grow up? I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to take the same techniques and methodology that I used for 20 years to help a business or a product promote itself, and look at doing that for people? Because of where the market was, with everybody desperately trying to be relevant and seen, my offer of personal branding hit. I mean, it hit like wildfire. It wasn't as popular as it is today. 16 years ago, people really didn't know what personal branding was. But I was able to go forward with this idea that I can help you tell your story, stand tall in your value, and be in charge of the opportunities you attract, instead of just kind of waiting and hoping and sort of chasing this artificial idea of success. And the rest is history. It's been 16 and a half years of doing this.
Wow. And there's so much that you're sharing that really resonates with what I do, and what really speaks to my heart about this. That was the economy that got you to pause in your tracks and see, how can I take what I used in my corporate world serving companies, and how can I actually serve other people rather than doing products and really serving people? And I love that artificial success. And I think most of us, and those who listen to that and the recordings, is that we've done it. We tick the box. But is there more? I'm super curious. When people reach out to me, they come with this, and that's probably can relate. It's like deep within, there is this longing that even my body's responding now, that I know I'm meant for more.
Yeah.
But at least in Europe, and those clients are also serving years, it's kind of, you don't say that loud.
Right. Well, you sound ungrateful, or like you don't appreciate everything you've been given. And I didn't want to dispel everything I had done, because I did. I made the money, I had the impact, I had the title, but I just didn't know if that's really what it was all about. That's what I had been told it was all about.
Yeah.
But I just, like you said, I always wondered if there wasn't something more I was supposed to do. And looking back, had I known I would get to this place where I have the absolute blessing of working with the people that I work with and doing the work that I would have been so much more excited about it. But I didn't know what was possible, because I was going against everything that I had been raised to believe I was supposed to want.
Yeah, so you were flipping the script, really,
Oh,
right?
very much. Very much.
So tell me if you about these fears, because I think a lot of women I serve is actually reaching out and saying, "I know I'm meant for more, but do I really dare to break free? What about all these limiting beliefs and the society pressure, group pressure?" So how did you navigate through that season in your life?
I think a lot of naivete, honestly. I don't think I realized how scary it was at the time. It just made sense and it felt good. And, you know, what I had done is kind of looked backwards first to understand what were the high points of my career that gave me personal satisfaction, not the financial rewards, not the on paper resume rewards, but what had been most meaningful. And I created a job description doing just that, right? I love speaking to audiences, being on stage, being in front of a camera. I love that. I love writing. And that was something I was really good at since school. And I love coaching. And I thought, I'm going to create a business doing all three of those things. But I had no idea how hard it was going to be. I had no idea that I should be scared, more scared than I was. So I just kind of did it. And I know that sounds a little cavalier, but I think sometimes when we're faced with those big changes, it's really about just taking the first step and then seeing how that feels and then taking the second step. And that's really how I did it. My first book, I don't think it was that great of a book, but it sold like crazy because there was nothing like it in the market. And so it was like, okay, I wrote a book. It's a small book. It's getting a lot of attention. What if it could be a better book, right? So it was taking a step and then doing the next thing. The
Mm.
first time I got on stage, I don't think I was fabulous, but I did it and I learned from it. So everything was a learning process. Every opportunity taught me something. And if I wasn't learning from it, I don't think I would have gotten better at it.
Is that a mindset you always have had from childhood, that you always saw an opportunity in, like, you're learning from it, right? That you're not getting stuck in looking at the mistakes. The mistakes are not it's not equal your identity. So you're learning and you're leaning in. Is that something you've been?
I would love to say yes. I think I'm also that person that when I make a mistake, I beat myself up about it. I think we all do, right? I wish I had said this, or why didn't I see that? But as I've gotten older and more experience, I think I can analyze things differently now. I've had clients approach me and want to work with me, for instance, and they aren't my ideal client. And in those moments, I have to look at, is there something I can learn here? First of all, can I do a good job? Because if I'm way outside of what I know how to coach on, I'm going to let them down and I'll let myself down. But there have been a couple of times where I've taken on a client that I wasn't quite sure about. I took a step and that step felt good. I took the next step and that step felt good. And then by the end of the engagement, I looked back and said, that was awesome. I'm so proud of myself for having the courage, which is the first rule in the new rules of influence, is to have courage to say, there's something I could learn here. And I'm going to keep myself safe and know who I am, but I'm curious. And so I take a step and then I take another step. That's probably been more of my pattern.
And it's interesting because curious is also one of your roles.
Mhm.
I wanted to dive in on that. If someone is listening and say, okay, I don't really have the courage because I'm in a big organization, it can be a small, but as a very vocal CEO or board chairman, whatever, it gets me to play small because I feel insecure. I fear being rejected. I'm being too much. So my courage to actually speak up and really own my message is also one of your points, right? Really own your message. How, from a personal branding and standpoint, what would be your advice to actually build your courage muscle?
And I call it courage muscle in the book. Um, you know, you first have to know who you are and what you offer, because just to be courageous and be reckless doesn't get you anywhere. I am clear on who I am, what I stand for, what I can offer, and who needs me, which is the foundation of personal branding, right? With that, I can see the opportunities where my voice is needed. Doesn't mean I'm not scared, because courage is not the absence of fear, it's working through fear, right? But I think for a lot of people listening, we talk about courage and we say, just be bold and brave and raise your hand. That's easier said than done. You have to know who you are first. And I know it sounds a little trite to say, self-assessment, self-discovery, but we see so many leaders today making decisions that aren't authentic, that aren't consistent. And the reason people don't trust them is because they don't have a sense of who they are, but they're trying to convince us of who they are. So the whole thing falls apart. So for the listener who says, I'm in a very hierarchical environment, I want to have more input, I want to say something, my first question would be, where do you feel that sort of unwavering commitment to a message? I know what my message is. I want to shout it from the rooftops. I want to whisper it to people who need to hear it. I'm very clear about what that message is, because if you're not, it's really hard to have courage. So thinking through that lens, I think, is a great place to start thinking about courage.
Oh, I love that. And what is your message? And I can relate that. Stand on the rooftop or the top of the mountain and just shout out, like, what is it that we want to, that impact, or the positive impact that we want to create in the world.
And one of the things I love about the book, The New Rules of Influence, is it isn't just about changing the world, right? Because not everybody wakes up in the morning and wants to advocate for climate change or advocate for the end of poverty, whatever. Sometimes it's just about, I want to speak up in a meeting, or I want my boss to take me seriously. I want to sit at the table with the people who are making the decisions. Those can be the types of influence. You still need to have courage. But in a situation like that, what's important is, know yourself and know what your message is. We don't want to, most people can't think on the fly, we call it, on their feet as well as others. So think it through ahead of time. What is the message you want to bring up? Is it, I have an idea for something that our team or our division can do? Or is it, I think I see a problem and I need to bring that up before it becomes worse?
Yeah.
That takes a lot of courage.
But even that requires courage, because sometimes, at least those I serve and work with, they see a problem, but sometimes they feel that because of the hierarchy that they have to bend rather than actually.
Right.
Well, we are learning, we're helping them stand in the power, and maybe we can tie that to the courage to your maybe overarching vision for the new rules of influence, where you talk about that is the new version 2.0 about influence. It's nothing to do with titles. It's nothing to do with authority. It's actually to do with something very different. Tell me more.
So what I've done with the book is sort of challenge this idea of executive presence. I don't know how it is in Denmark, but I have clients in over 30 countries, and there seems to be a common practice, societal practice, corporate practice that says, in order to have influence, in order to be taken seriously, you have to look a certain way, you have to sound a certain way, and you have to have these qualities that we can't describe, we can't teach, but we know it when we see it. That's what we call gravitas. And I mean, I taught that. I have taken all the courses, I've read all the books. The problem I've always had with executive presence is I don't look and sound or want to be that model. I don't want to sound scripted. I don't want to have to dress a certain way to be accepted. I don't want to wait until I have a certain title after my name before people will listen to me. And what I've learned in the last years of doing this work is there are a lot of voices out there in companies, in communities, in countries that don't fit the mold, but have something really important to say. Here's an example. Greta Thunberg, right? Sits in front of Swedish parliament at the age of 15 and advocates for climate change. She doesn't look the part. She didn't sound the part, but boy, she made a difference. And she started a movement and a conversation. We see that happening in companies, that somebody without the right title, right? They don't have a C letter after their name, CEO, CMO. They don't have necessarily maybe the technical acumen, but their insights are so important. And what we're learning as companies, as industries, is if we don't pay attention to those voices, we're going to miss things. We're going to miss important elements. So what I did in the book is I just introduced 10 new ways of thinking about influence so that somebody who wants to just have more confidence raising their hand or wants to advocate and start a movement can find a new playbook. There's still a place in the world for the old model of executive presence. Some industries still relate that way, and that's fine. But for the rest of us, I think we needed something different, something really easy to digest. And there's even a little bit of humor in the book. So people didn't know I could be funny, but I can actually be a little bit funny. So
I love that. So I'm super curious. So you mentioned in the beginning about your new technique, and then still, if I were an executive, VP, SVP, but in a big organization, there's still a lot of like layers. How
right.
do I find my voice, and how do I create my space of influence if I per se do not have been given the permission or the allowance to join the room, but actually I feel I should be part of that room? What would be the step 1, 2, or 3?
Well, I don't think it's about waiting, and I don't think it's about being too aggressive. I'll share a quick story. Many years ago, when I was still in corporate, I worked for an organization that had a board of directors. And every month, the board of directors would meet with senior staff, senior leadership that I was part of, and we would discuss what was happening in the organization. And there was a huge oval table in the middle of this room that we met in. And the board sat at the table, and the rest of us sat along the wall in the back. Every month I watched this and I thought, there's plenty of seats at the table. I can't hear as well from where I'm sitting. So one month I sat at the table with the board, and people looked at me and thought that was kind of odd, but okay. Nobody said anything. And we had the meeting. The next month I sat at the table and I raised my hand and I said something. The next month, one of my colleagues joined me at the table. The next month, that person said something. I think sometimes what we have to do is take the seat at the table instead of waiting for someone to say, we have plenty of seats. Why don't you join us? I think we sometimes have to take that seat. Now, in male-dominated industries, right, and we see them in pharma, we see them in technology, in finance, a lot of male-dominated industries, and we can layer on top of that sometimes cultural issues, right? Certain cultures have different views of women, for instance, in the workplace. That all adds complexity. So I'm not a fan of just being loud and in charge, right? Or being, taking control that way. Very often what happens when I coach a client in a situation like this is we spend a lot of time talking about what that other leader, maybe that male leader, needs. So in the book, one of the sections is, who do you want to influence? We have to understand the needs and the fears and the dreams of the people that we're trying to influence. So to somebody listening who might be in that environment, very male dominated, has a lot of bureaucracy and hierarchy, they want to start asserting themselves, take the focus and put it on the other people. What do they care about? Where's the resistance coming from? How can you navigate that to introduce yourself with influence? So it's not a, a club over the head. It's more of a subtle, and it might take a while. It absolutely might take a while. These are not systems that happened overnight. They've happened for a long time. But is there a way forward? Absolutely. And it might just start going back to my pattern, might just start with that first step. See how that feels, then take the next step. But try sitting at the table and see if anybody says anything.
I love that. That's actually also what we teach in my community. It's all about what I say and teach and help women with, is that rather than an inside out, then an outside in, serve, then going from transactional to transformational, and then everything will shift.
Yes.
I'm super curious because there's a lot of, I think, listeners who can relate to that, coming from me. And can I have a seat at the table? Not waiting to be invited, but actually allowing yourself and giving yourself the permission to be worthy and have a seat at the table. What, according to all your wisdom, what is that one belief that women need to hold, want to hold to create more influence?
I think, you and I were chatting before we came on this meeting, and you mentioned something about, there's this hesitancy to, we fear, right? We fear stepping outside of what's comfortable. And I was reminded of a call I had yesterday with a client who is growing his influence within the organization. And he has relied on his technical acumen. I mean, he has relied on that subject matter expertise. That is everything he has hung his reputation and his brand on. And what we talked about was moving away from that and focusing on who he is. So men are struggling with this too. But going to your question, I think we're all afraid of being judged. We're all afraid of somebody saying, that's ridiculous, or that's foolish, or who are you to think you can sit at the table, right? I was scared writing this book because I share a lot of personal stories. I'm worried that people are going to judge me differently or think my stories don't make sense, or, we're always afraid of being judged. But the reality is, and this is the through line of my work, people will judge. Perception is a reality. People will judge us based on what we look like, what we sound like, what their experience with someone similar has been. They will judge. So we have to know that that happens. The only way to avoid that is to hide and never be seen or heard. But that's not a really fun way to live life.
No.
So knowing that people will judge and that often their perception can be wrong, then we look at what can we do to affect or influence that judgment? What can we do to influence that perception? So for example, how are you showing up on social media? How are you showing up in casual conversations at work? How are you showing up in formal meetings at work? All of those are touch points, and they all reinforce perception. When you have an idea of the brand that you want, the reputation that you want, how I want to be known and seen, then all of those touch points drive to that goal. And it's that consistency that affects and changes perception to the positive.
Love that. There's also a cornerstone in your book, and who you are is that brand and the reputation. In your words, for listeners who want to take their career and their life to the next level, why should they be so interested in building their own brand and reputation? And what would happen if they do not focus on that?
I love that question. That might be my favorite question so far, Camilla, because we will have a brand and reputation if we do nothing about it. Everyone has a brand by design or by default. It's a quote I'm well known for. We have a brand. People feel certain things about us. They perceive us certain ways. If we do nothing about it, that will exist. But remember when I said perception can be wrong? If we haven't been designing it, if we haven't been mindful of how we want to show up and how we want people to experience us, then we are going to miss the opportunities that we want. We're going to miss the relationships and conversations that we want because they're giving those opportunities and conversations to someone else because they think that's more appropriate. And most of us go through life without thinking about this. But when we do think about it, all of a sudden there's this calm that comes over us because there's control, there's intention, there's focus instead of, I don't know, maybe I should take that job. I did that for 20 years, right? That job pays better. That job is for a company that everybody knows. I guess I should take it. I never had the strategy or the intention until I started my business and started thinking about this. And that's what I get to help clients do.
Oof, I love that. And then if I may just double down on that, the strategy and intention, even though you and I, we're entrepreneurs and business owners, but it does not just, what do you say in English? It just not count for us. It counts and matters for everyone in the corporate world, whatever that is, to have strategy and be so intentional with how you show up, who you want to become, right?
I work with a client in Switzerland and she struggled with getting to the next promotion. And one of my questions really stopped her. I said, why do you want that promotion? And she looked at me like, why wouldn't I? I said, that's not the answer. Why do you want the promotion? Because it's what you do. Try again. Why do you want the promotion? She was in that same loop that I found myself in, that other people find them, right? We do it because that's what you're supposed to do, right? You go higher in the org. I have another client who has turned down multiple opportunities in his company to be in management. He said, I don't want to manage people. I like doing the work. And that's very counterintuitive. His boss says to him, you don't want to grow in the company? He says, of course I want to grow in the company. I just don't want to manage. So I want to, I want to increase my skills. I want to increase my contribution. I want to lead teams. I want to have impact. I don't want to have manager after my title. Very different. And so I almost think men challenge that differently than women. But for that woman who says, maybe I don't want to have a promotion because that does mean more time away from my family. It means my hobbies are going to take a back seat. It means I'm going to be doing things in the role that don't bring out joy for me. So what could I do to grow my influence and my impact to what I'm doing that don't necessarily come with a job title? Once you start having that conversation, you mentioned limiting mindset, right? What I'm asking, and I'm sure you're asking too, is how can we have a growth mindset? How can we look at what is it I want to do? Where do I want to contribute? We don't have an infinite amount of time here on Earth, right? At a certain point, the chapter closes. So what do we want to have done? What do we want to contribute? If that means going for a promotion to be able to have that, then go for it. But think it through and be able to answer that question more clearly than, well, why wouldn't I want a promotion? That's not the right answer.
My body's responding now because this is so deep and many people are not aware of that because we're just supposed to go for that promotion or that another job. But this is about, when going back to that, with your own reputation and your own brand, is that why are you really here for? What is your calling? And what is that you want to contribute? I mean, I love that so much. And that also comes into the strategy and being really intentional with your next move. But just one other question, and you have your book is over here, but I just really stick to my set of questions, right? Because in order for us to be the real me, as what you're also talking about in the book, it's also about coming from our truest self. And you talk about finding your why. Why is it important? And I know it, but still, to discover our why, and what are we coming from that? If we're not discovering our why, so can you double down on that? Why it's important to discover our why?
Yeah, and I love the question. I have had people challenge me to say, "Oh my gosh, it's a book about self-discovery." Yeah, it's a little bit of a book about self-discovery, but maybe the other books haven't worked, right? So why is why we're here, right? What we're here to do. And it's a big question. When I speak in front of audiences and I ask, how many of you feel you know yourself? All the hands go up. But do they really know themselves? I mean, we can spend a lifetime trying to figure out who we are, why we're here, and what we're supposed to do. And that's not the bad news. That's the good news. Because unfolding, unpacking, as we mature, as we evolve, as we have hard situations and happy situations, we become who we were meant to be. My message in the book about why is to all those people who are in that sort of, there's an American expression, we call it the hamster wheel, you know, the little hamster, the critter who goes and just goes, and because that's where momentum is. That's how I spent 20 years, right? I did what I thought you were supposed to do. And it was when everything stopped and I asked myself really hard questions like, what could I do? What would I love to do? What have I done in the past that I love to do? Then that gave me the feeling of success, me, the feeling, not society's feelings. And I started looking at all that things became clear. Sometimes what I'll do with a client or an audience is I'll say, first, let's start with the things you don't want, right? What do you know is not your mission? I can tell you, Camilla, my mission is not to design technology because I am not good with technology. But I do believe part of my why is to help and serve people that really want to show up in this world and take advantage of everything that we have to offer. Those people are definitely my why. And what happens when I start unraveling that and unpacking that is those people start finding me. And then we start doing work together. And then the community grows. And that's how we build brand. Is thinking, how can I show up on LinkedIn or YouTube or Instagram? How can I write books that speak to that audience? How can I send a message from the stage that is going to reach people in their heart? All of it comes from knowing why we are here at this moment in this world, as crazy as it is right now. And that's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful
And I
thing.
love that. So if we may just for one moment focus on the corporate world, right? So even there is a client said to me, I'm just used to really be handpicked and handpicked and handpicked, and then suddenly, what's next? And nobody's actually pushing me or pulling me to the next one. And to coming to that plateau, and what do I really, really want to do? So finding your why is that it's important in the corporate world when you will come to that plateau in your career. What is that you really want to contribute with your entire wisdom that you have accumulated and your knowledge and your insights over the last
and your passion, right? So a lot of times I will meet a client and they're sort of at the midpoint of their career. They're not always the CEO. Sometimes they are. Sometimes they're on that path. They're not just starting out. they're at that midpoint. And so we have the opportunity to look back. And similar to what I did, I can look back with them and say, okay, so when you were in that job and you were facing those challenges or you took those opportunities, talk about what you were thinking. What were you feeling? Okay, now let's talk about the next one. What were you feeling? What were you thinking? And we start to build, looking backwards, patterns. And those patterns can often indicate what we're supposed to do. So maybe it's, I made tough choices. I prioritized my family. I stood up for my team. I was passionate about helping my company understand how to serve the community. I pushed up against norms. Whatever those patterns are, they've already had life experience. They've had corporate experience. So we can extract the value from that and start to see how that might look going forward. And oftentimes doing that, we realize maybe they're in the wrong company. Maybe the things they stand for and the values that they want to live up to don't align with the values of the company that they're in. Or maybe they do so well that they should be in a leadership role because they are an ambassador for this brand, this company brand. So it's really kind of looking at all these things and asking tough questions and then giving yourself the space to ideate, to be imaginative. It's a cool thing to figure out your why. It really is.
And everything shifts.
Everything shifts. My clients tell me it's magical. And I'm like, it's not magic. To me, it's common sense. And then things just start coming at you. Like our conversation, right? Our conversation today came from a conversation I had with someone else where you saw synergy between what you and I both do professionally and our stories. And so now I'm given an opportunity to share a message I'm passionate about with your audience. And I'll take your message to my audience. And it happens. It happens.
And that's where freedom comes in and joy. That's so, your life shifts when you find your why, and it becomes effortless to be you.
It becomes easier to be you.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I spent a long time not having it be easy.
But it's a shift we don't often realize how easy life can be and how joyful it can be, because we're not really us, we're not really real, because we wear so many masks. But that's what you're passionate about, and your book is also about, right, allowing yourself to be you. One question before wrapping up. And so I heard you once said, Lida, that you admire people who are unwavering in what they believe. It really got me to pause. That was one of the podcast interviews, because they listen to others. It's about inclusive mentality. And here's that they are unapologetically themselves about what they believe in. I said, wow, because I learned to not apologize for owning my beliefs, right? If I'm tying that statement or the belief in that value, that's bigger than just the words, back to building your personal brand and reputation. Like this, being so grounded that you just stand like in a board or whatever room that is, and just allowing yourself to be you. Can you tie that back to reputation and maybe why and what you have to shift, maybe even more?
I think the shift is an emotional one. I think it's also a very practical one, right? So being unapologetic, there are certain topics I am unapologetic about. I will, in any opportunity, raise my hand and speak up. There are also others that I don't need to participate in. They're not ones I'm deeply passionate about. But boy, you get me the ones I am, and I will let it be known. And I think looking at the corporate world, we can bring some of that, right? Picking and choosing, where do we need to share our voice and when can we let others go first? Making sure that we listen without judgment. And that's tricky. That's really tricky, right? Especially for leaders. They listen for confirmation and compliance, right? Everybody agrees. Everybody's going to do what I say. That's not influence, by the way. They're doing it because their paycheck comes from it. But being able to listen to ideas or views that are different and say, well, maybe there's something I can learn here. That's why I took those clients on that I wasn't quite sure about, because I thought there's an opportunity for me to learn something and stretch and get a little uncomfortable, but I'm going to grow. And then I can decide if I want to do that again. All of that comes from having a sense of purpose and a sense of direction. And it's really more direction than it is knowing what the job title that you're looking for or the company you want to work for. What's the direction you're moving, right? Who are the people you want to serve? How do you want to serve them? And why you?
And I love that, because of direction, then you come to the highest level of fulfillment, where the title is not about really fulfillment, right? So I love that. So just, I want to wrap up. It's been such an amazing conversation. I could go on and on with these questions. What is your number one piece of advice for a senior executive looking to take her career and her life to the next level?
One of the biggest pieces of advice would be consistency. When things are inconsistent, we build distrust or we become skeptical. For example, if you tell me you're passionate about your team, you're passionate about growing your team, but on LinkedIn, you don't post about team building, you don't post about things that support that. If you tell me that you stand for a set of principles, honesty, collaboration, inclusivity, right? You tell me those are your principles, but in meetings, I see you being dismissive and not inclusive and not honest, then there's inconsistency. Personal branding and influence are not about being perfect. We can't be perfect. We're human beings. We will make mistakes. I make them daily, but we should be consistent. When somebody reads my books, goes to my YouTube, goes to my website, looks at me on social media, talks to someone who knows me, they're going to hear the same message about who I am and what the experience of talking to me would be like. And the people who are attracted to that are going to call me. The people who aren't are going to move off to the next person, and that's okay. In the corporate world, we have to be okay that we are not everyone's cup of tea. But if the right audience sees us in the right way consistently, then amazing opportunities open up.
And I love that about consistency and the energy and the words and the action they match, and just showing up and serve so deeply. What the other partner will say, it's not you to choose and control. So as you show up to your highest version of yourself. I love that. Anything you would like to offer our listeners, where they can find more about you, your book? I know you that new book. So where do you want people to go to if they want to read more about you or listen to your different podcasts and books? Tell us.
So I have a very big YouTube channel. I have a lot of videos and important messages people can just listen to. My TED Talk is on there. My website is Lida360, Lida 360.com. And wherever books are sold, you can find The New Rules of Influence, which I'm really proud of. I've written 7 books. And you know, you ask a parent, which is your favorite child, and they're never supposed to say. I'm not supposed to say this might be my favorite, but it might be my favorite. I don't know. We'll see. It's a very personal book for me. And I'm on every social media platform out there. So yeah.
Thanks, Lida. And number 7, that's a angel number, that's a power number. So I think that's something in you writing that best book in number 7. So I'm so excited.
I hope so. Lucky number 7.
So Lida, with this, I want to close this amazing fireside chat. Thanks for taking us through and updating us on why it matters to build a brand, why it matters to have that reputation, because whether you're conscious or unconscious, you do have a reputation. So you better act and work on it so it works for you and not against you.
Absolutely.
So,
Thank you for having me. It's been a real pleasure.
yeah, thanks, Lida. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. If you are a woman looking to take your career to the next level or ascend in your leadership and life, then check out our amazing community, Project Olympus, at our website, www.calbergcoaching.com/Olympus. And also head over to our website, Calberg Coaching, www.calbergcoaching.com, for free goodies, free resources, free workshop series. We have an amazing challenge coming up real soon, Be More Impactful, to help you elevate your leadership and step into a greater level of meaningful work and truly transform into the person you know you're meant to be. Remember, you are not wrong from leading from who you really are and from a place that feels so authentic and soul aligned. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I want to encourage you to listen to one of the other episodes we have on the unlimited mindset for now, to continue your growth and inspiration. See you on the next episode. Bye for now.